Good evening. You're watching AWANI Tonight with me, Saraya Mia. Prime Minister Datuk Seri Anwar Ibrahim met a Hamas delegation during his 3-day visit to Qatar. He also urged Israel to stop atrocities against Palestinians, release all prisoners, and agree to a peace plan. The Hamas delegation was led by its chief Ismail Haniyeh and former chairman Khalid Mashal. They briefed Anwar on the latest developments in Gaza and Rafah. In a Facebook post, Anwar said Malaysia would continue to play its role in mobilizing efforts to help those affected by the war in Gaza. He also offered his condolences on the deaths of Haniyeh's family members who were killed in Israeli bombings. Haniyeh's 3 sons and 4 grandchildren had been killed in an Israeli airstrike on the Gaza Strip in April. Datuk Seri Anwar Ibrahim called out the hypocritical attitude of some great powers who deliberately spread the wrong understanding about Islam. The Prime Minister made the remarks while delivering a public lecture entitled The Future of the Islamic World at the Qatar National Library at Hamad bin Khalifa University today.
During the lecture, Anwar expressed his disappointment over the failure of the world, especially Western countries, in caring about the atrocities happening in Gaza. He said it is also sad to see many non-Muslim countries exhibiting so much hatred and injustice towards Muslim minorities in their countries.
So civilized people don't clash. What actually happened, according to Edward Said's thesis, is a clash of ignorance. So those people talking about human rights, democracy, and denying basic rights of people because they are colored or because they are different religion should come to the library and spend time to learn a bit more about humanity and life and knowledge.
The Prime Minister is currently on a work visit to Qatar beginning Monday at the invitation of his Emir Sheikh Tamim Hamad Al Thani, with the highlight program being the Qatar Economic Forum and the inauguration of the National University of Malaysia UKM campus in Doha.
The Malaysian Meteorological Department, Met Malaysia, predicts the southwest monsoon to begin on May 17th and last until September 2024. It expects the change in weather patterns to bring drier days across the country during this period. Met Malaysia Director General Muhammad Hilmi Abdullah said the southwest monsoon typically brought fewer rain clouds, resulting in less rainfall. However, he warned that the season did not rule out the possibility of heavy rains accompanied by strong winds and thunderstorms. He added that haze would be a major concern during this period, particularly between July and September if open burning was not adequately controlled. The public is also advised to use water sparingly during this period. Deputy Prime Minister Datuk Seri Fadila Yusof has confirmed that the draft MOU regarding the allocation of funds to members of Parliament is nearing completion. Once finalized, he said the draft would be renewed and approved by the top leadership of all political parties, including the opposition.
He said there was currently no specific deadline for completing the draft. Fadila said among the critical aspects of the MOU was to ensure that contentious issues, such as those concerning religion, royalty and race, 3 Rs, will not be exploited by political factions. On April 18th, it was reported that the Unity Government Secretariat Supreme Leadership Council had agreed in principle to consider extending allocations to elected representatives from the opposition.
Malaysia's population was estimated to reach 34 million in the first quarter of 2024. This is an increase of 2.3% from the 33.2 million recorded in the same period last year.
Chief Statistician Datuk Seri Muhammad Uzair Mahidin said the total population comprised 90% or 30.6 million citizens and 10% or 3.4 million non-citizens. Meanwhile, the overall sex ratio of population was 111 males to 100 females. The number of live births in the first quarter of 2024 recorded a decrease of 9.4% compared to 2023. Selangor had the highest number of live births with 19,951 births, while Labuan had the lowest with 323 births.
The government plans to offer orangutans as gifts to its palm oil trading partners, including China, India and the European Union, an announcement that has drawn criticism. Dr. Henry Chan from WWF Malaysia weighs in on the effectiveness of the proposed program and outlines other ways Malaysia can demonstrate its commitment to orangutan conservation.
There are actually better ways to showcase our national commitment here to orangutan conservation. First of all is that orangutan are wildlife and they live in the forest, and therefore we should improve our forest management. And number two, over the last 30 years, some of these forests have been converted into palm oil plantations, and therefore we must enhance our commitment towards the sustainable production of palm oil. Now, when we combine these two strategies, the outcome is that there will be a positive impact on orangutan conservation in Malaysia. If the intention is to raise awareness on orangutan, Malaysia should promote orangutan conservation areas, not projects, beyond those shown for tourism. For example, in Sabah, there is this Bukit Piton that was once a marsh degraded forest. It has now been restored in the forest, and today, Bukit Piton is home to the surrounding orangutans. In Sarawak, the Batai National Park and the adjacent forest is home to almost 2,000 orangutans. Another more impactful strategy is palm oil plantations should conserve orangutans in the habitat. In this, palm oil companies should manage wildlife within the plantations as part of the natural assets.
Looking at China's panda diplomacy, Henry suggested lessons that can be learned and applied in the Malaysian context.
China has prevented the extinction of panda in the wild since the 1960s, over the last 2 decades. And this is through protecting large areas for the panda and effectively managing them for conservation. So it is in this context that we find it hard to see how the few panda offspring born in the foreign zoos have contributed to the prevention of the extinction of panda in the wild. Now, nonetheless, we can learn from China's panda diplomacy. Our recipient countries would have very high maintenance costs to take care of their orangutan gifts if we were to follow China panda's diplomacy suit. So instead of sending out its gifts, we should invite our training partners and the media to come to see how we conserve our orangutan. And therefore, we should invite them to adopt and provide funding support to our orangutan conservation projects. This would create a whole range of benefits. Number one, we could increase our forest cover and restore degraded areas to enhance the integrity of the orangutan habitats. Number two, our local people would stand to benefit by being employed as orangutan stewards and forest restoration managers.
Time for a quick break. We'll be back with more.
Khazanah kita kini di pentas dunia. Malaysia menjadi gelanggang cabaran terbesar. Berdiri teguh bersama wira negara. Ini masa kita. Istaf Sepak Takraw World Cup Kuala Lumpur 2024 secara langsung di Astro Arena dan Astro Go.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh dan salam Malaysia Madani. Tuan-tuan dan perempuan, Agenda Nasional Malaysia Sihat atau ANMS merupakan satu pendekatan oleh kerajaan yang mahu membawa rakyat ke arah pembudayaan hidup sihat. Carilah ruang dan peluang untuk melakukan saringan kesihatan, melakukan aktiviti fizikal, mengamalkan pengambilan makanan yang sihat dan selamat, menjaga kebersihan diri dan juga persekitaran, seterusnya mengubah tingkah laku ke arah kesihatan yang lebih baik. Ayuh kita sama-sama mengamalkan dan semarakkan pembudayaan hidup sihat demi kesejahteraan rakyat Malaysia. Agenda Nasional Malaysia Sihat. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Talks over a ceasefire in Gaza have reached a stalemate. Speaking at the Economic Forum, Qatar's Prime Minister Sheikh Mohammed bin Abdulrahman Al Thani said this was due to Israel's operations in Rafah.
Well, it's been actually a very long process, and especially in the past few weeks, we have seen some momentum building, but unfortunately, things didn't move in the right direction. And right now, we are in a status of almost a stalemate. Of course, what happened with Rafah has set us backward a little bit.
Qatar has mediated heavily between Hamas and Israel throughout the 7th-month conflict.
We are seeing there is a fundamental difference between the two parties. There is one party who wants to end the war and then talk about the hostages. There is another party who wants the hostages and wants to continue the war. And as long as there is no any commonality between those two things, it won't get us to a result.
Sheikh Mohammed said Qatar would keep working to resolve the situation. Israel's assault in Rafah, which started this month, have closed a main crossing point for aid from the border with Egypt, a move humanitarian groups say has worsened an already dire situation.
At least 14 people were killed and dozens more injured after a billboard fell on them during a thunderstorm in India's financial capital, Mumbai. Many are still feared trapped under the 100-foot-tall iron billboard, which collapsed on several houses and a petrol station late on Monday. Authorities said at least 74 people were injured in the incident and taken to hospital. 31 of them have since been discharged. They added that they were in the process of removing bodies buried in the rubble. The storm brought traffic to a standstill in parts of the city and disrupted operations at Mumbai's airport, one of the country's busiest. Several incidents of trees and other billboards being uprooted were also reported from across the city, along with waterlogging caused by the heavy rains. Myanmar's junta is pressing ahead with military conscription, with new recruits seen marching to training centers across the country. According to state broadcaster MRTV, the second batch of recruits began arriving at their camps last week.
The first batch of recruits began training in April, although the junta has not revealed how many were signed up. The junta is struggling to crush widespread opposition to its rule and recently suffered a series of losses to an alliance of ethnic minority armed groups. In February, it announced it would enforce a law to call up all young men and women to serve in the military. The move sent thousands queuing for visas at foreign embassies in Yangon in an attempt to flee the country. Local media have reported cases of young men being taken off the streets to undergo military training, something the junta has denied. Around 13 million people would be eligible to be called up, but the military said it only had the capacity to train 50,000 each year.
Meanwhile, the number of people killed by flash floods and mudslides in Indonesia's West Sumatra province has risen to 52. Authorities said of the total, more than 45 had been identified, with local rescuers, police and military still searching for 17 people who are still missing.
Meanwhile, more than 3,000 people have been evacuated. According to authorities, though the floods have receded since Sunday, the distribution of aid has been impeded as most roads were covered by mud and debris. Torrential rain on Saturday evening triggered flash floods, landslides and cold lava flow in 3 districts in West Sumatra province. It was reported a total of 249 houses, 225 hectares of land including rice fields, and most of main roads in the districts were damaged. Heavy rains are still expected until next week.
That's all we have for you on AWANI Tonight. Thank you for watching. I'm Saraya Mia. Good night.